Welcome. We will close the doors here in front of my friend Piotr. And the entrance, let's organize that the entrance is in the back. Welcome everyone. Another meetup in a great, wow, full room full of people. I'm so shocked. We are live streaming, so it goes especially to our friends in Katowice. Second logistic thing is we will do that today in English, so that we don't eliminate some of us from the story. Okay. What we will enjoy. First of all, I hope you will enjoy the landscape of that office. Lingaro gave us a chance to be here. You know, I work here, so it was maybe easier to organize, but they did. Thank you, thank you. Second thing is, I really like the device, and it's good to have a meetup with the gadgets. More gadgets than just Qlik Sense or Clique. That's another funny device, which I will show you. So stay tuned, because we will see more of that later on. We will use that as a device to show you the stories which were prepared first of all by Göran, and you've seen in the agenda that we will talk about monitoring, DevOps, all the things, bits and pieces he enjoyed doing in Spotify for many years with Qlik Sense. Now his expertise is with him today here. Then a larger break, because we learned from previous meetups that it's worth talking to each other instead of just listening to me. Yeah, 1 hour break, pizza will come, so pizza will break the day a little bit, maybe, because we want to have it warm in our stomach aches. And last but not least, then we start with a session about very mysterious finger-breaking Qlik core technology. To explain to you what it is, Michał and Emil standing in the back, you know, keeping the wall because they didn't sleep for some nights because of that. Also, another Michał who didn't sleep because of building up a device which serves the data.
Switch on the air conditioning. This is the reason why they would be good.
Yeah, I mean, that's normal here. We push people to limits, they will survive.
Okay.
We want to negotiate with you later on, you need to be warm. And we plan to end, so 1 hour, let's say Göran, his presentation, questions, pizza, break for 1 hour, then 1 hour about Clique or etc. Remind me to tell you about an idea of Clickathon this year. What's the plan? I hope it streams well. Let me see the comments. No new comments. Okay, so people from Katowice, do you hear us? Please type it in, and I need to wait for the answer. Roundabout. Okay, they cannot find keyboard. Przemek is not from Katowice. Okay, they're already sleeping. Whatever. I just keep my fingers crossed that it's all smooth and steady. I will ask Jacek if everything is okay. They are. Yeah, good point. Słyszymy. Niezłogotka. So, you know, in Katowice, in Silesia, they have a different dialect, even words, even language. So we need to put Google Translator on top of the comments from Katowice. We got a translator, please come up on stage. Stand here. Good. Can you translate this thing to English?
Yeah.
Fluently?
We can try it.
No. Good. So to recap, we have a board, let's use it. First thing, Göran, our main dish today. No pressure. Second dish is networking and pizza. Third thing is Clique which is bad from the core. And that will be the end of our day. If somebody wants to join us later on for beer along the river of Vistula, is also welcomed, but this comes later. So now, Göran, stage, including stream from your Mac. It's live.
Yes,
I pass you.
it works.
I will not pass. It's here.
Oh yes.
And I'm getting back to my studio.
I'm gonna try not to this. Someone lowered the temperature. I'm not sure it's actually.
I tried.
Yeah. It's on 24 degrees, so it's gonna be warm.
Yeah, the point is, maybe after hours it's...
Yeah, you're right.
Off.
We work on it, but it still doesn't work.
Sauna is nice, but you know that's. So, hello. Everyone.
Okay.
Very good to be here, and thanks for the introduction, of course. My name is Göran Sander, coming to you from Stockholm this morning, very early morning, but great to be here, first time in Warsaw, so it's a good one. I will talk about some of the more enterprise aspects of Qlik Sense, and just to get a feeling for who's here, are there people? We have a fan here.
I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
So what's the split between business-oriented people and tech-oriented people? So business people, show of hands, and more techies. So a bit of both. Okay. Hopefully we'll have something for all of you. Who am I then? I am this guy. So spent the last 10 years and 1 day at Spotify. It took a few weeks to figure out when I should resign to make it actually more than 10 years. So I joined with the company when it was about 30, left when it was thousands back in January. Since January I've been running my own business as a consultant, doing exactly the same things as before. So today I help big companies, big telcos, banks on their sense journey, industrializing their Qlik Sense work, but then also startups to get started on the journey of BI in general. Been doing Qlik stuff for past 7 or 8 years. Started with QlikView, and then we, on a very small scale, and then at Spotify we deployed Sense quite early, meaning that we had a lot of pain points initially. Early days of Qlik Sense were interesting, let's say. And then about 3.5 years ago, there was a switch to Sense, and that then grew into a global tool for Spotify. So lots and lots of users around the world, 24/7. So it's quite an interesting journey. And monitoring of Qlik Sense that I will talk about is obviously comes from that experience. And how do you run a Sense environment that's gonna be available 24/7 and for lots and lots of users. I'm an outdoor guy, electronics geek, so I'm looking forward to the second presentation here because there were some gadgets I was told. What else? I'm part of the Qlik Luminary program for the past 3 years, so it's, I don't know, Qlik Luminary is a program run by Clique where some people from the business and the tech side get together who've been kind of active in the community and so on. So it's a good one. Let's make this interactive. So if you have questions, if I forget to mention something that I should have, or if you have questions in general, just ask, interrupt me, just wait. And it's better to take questions while talking, I think.
What does Qlik Luminary stand for?
So it's not an awards program, but it's sort of people that have made contributions to like what I tend to call the Qlikosphere. So the Qlik ecosystem. It might be on the business side or on the tech side. My contributions has probably been in being an outspoken advocate in general, I guess. But then also I've been creating a family of open source tools that extend Qlik Sense enterprise. So making Qlik Sense enterprise more enterprise, if you like. because out of the box, Qlik Sense is absolutely awesome. I love the product, but there are some parts of it where maybe, for example, the monitoring aspect could be better out of the box. On the other hand, the APIs are very good. It's a platform, so you can basically extend that platform with what's missing for your particular use case. So I created some tools like that, collectively called Butler. We'll take a look at those later. I think that's why I'm in the Luminary program.
So it's
Only
like
Clique would know.
it's like Clique is selecting every year a group of people. It's a growing group of people who contributed really to Clique ecosystem, except from, let's say, Clique employees. So it's like someone from partners, customers, Clique geeks, and Göran is a lucky one to be nominated for the 3rd time. And every one of you can be nominated. You just need to, let's say, place your entry, document it, and then there is some voting in the in Clique, organized by the team.
There,
And
I don't know.
it's a
It's
secret
actually
sauce.
So if you feel that,
But you need to, let's say, you need to want to be there,
yeah,
and then they.
that's a good one. If you're active on the, if
My-
it's
my-
your core business of line work, it's a great business. So
My hint is to find a Clique Luminary page, because there you have so many people there. You can follow them on social media and get the best content about Clique from all of them.
that's actually a good idea.
I have
Let's
a
look at the
Twitter
gossip.
list even for that.
The gossip, what's happening
Exactly.
by listening to those people. Yep. And so during the next 40 minutes maybe, give or take, we will talk about monitoring of Sense. What are the options? We will talk about what I call Sense Ops, which is the notion of DevOps applied to Qlik Sense. We'll get back to that as well. Take a look at more real-time monitoring of Sense. So what are the options for that? And coming back then, being a bit more concrete, looking at a demo. The initial slides are mainly setting the stage for the demo. The demo is what people like, I guess. And then wrapping up with like a checklist. So if you are on the tech side and want to do this on your own Sense environments, there's a checklist for this 1, 2, 3. So before diving in, how many of you are involved in Sense work that involves more than 3 servers? So have a Sense cluster with more than 2 or 3 servers. 1, maybe so. And do you monitor when you go there? Do you sort of
Do I monitor actively?
What do you
No.
monitor actively? Like Windows, disk space, and
Yeah, this goes into classical monitoring of provider of the machine, but and then you can
So
you can track it and have alerting, let's say, from the cloud or something. But the rest is just more reactive. Something fails, you dive in.
Okay, so it's reactive, and there's a risk of your users knowing before you when something breaks. That's bad.
There is no chance to.
What we learned at
do that.
Spotify was that we don't want to be called, we don't want to get into office at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. in the morning, learning that Sense has been down for 8 hours or 10 hours. We want to be notified at 9 p.m. the night before, so we can, if it's something critical. We didn't have 24/7 service level agreements, but at least we want to know about things breaking. And that was really the rationale for putting in place the system that we'll look at today. And yeah, so being the first to know that something breaks is really key when it comes to providing a service that's seen as good by the end users. And that's something we probably want, all of us. What else? Yes. So this is probably the most common form of monitoring for Qlik Sense Enterprise. We're looking at an application called the Operations Monitor. It's shipped with every Qlik Sense Enterprise installation. So whether you like it or not, it's installed as part of Qlik Sense. And this is an awesome application. It's really, really good for what it does. So, for example, it can tell you what user used what application, when, how long the sessions were on average. Did people stay 5 minutes in Sense or 2 hours continuously? Or it gives you lots and lots of insights. What apps failed during reload? So, and is that something should probably be looked at? So it's essential for running a good Sense environment. However, it's because it's a Sense app, it has to be reloaded to be refreshed. Qlik Sense has this notion of reloading, so you can't really stream data into Qlik Sense environment. You have to reload the apps, and then they refresh with new data. Which means that in a large environment, if you have many servers or long history of data, that reload might take minutes or half an hour or more. And by the time it's done, you know, anything can happen. So it's in no way real time. But you should have it, definitely. And another good side about this is that the way this app is written is really easy to extend. So we've extended it in some cases where we want to look at user retention. How often do users come back into the Sense environment? Not only how many users did we have on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Wednesday, but also what percentage of the users active on Monday came back on Tuesday, and those on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and so on. So it's easy to add those kind of extended, refined metrics. So it's a very good resource. This is then the Windows Task Manager. Qlik Sense Enterprise today runs on Windows servers. And this is built in. On the left, we see the CPU utilization, and it looks good. There's some CPU activity, nothing out of the ordinary. On the right, we have the memory, and it's all gone. This is a fairly small server, only 8 gigabytes, but still. This could be a problem. Qlik Sense is designed to make use of all available memory, so it might be fine, but it's too flat up here. So I would definitely look at this if this was something I was responsible for. But using this for operational monitoring is not really a good idea. It only works if you're sitting in front of a computer and looking at this, and having like a remote desktop into the computer and actively looking at it. So it's a good start, but not really for serious business. So the next step is using something called the Resource Monitor, also a Windows tool. But then you get things like disk performance, network performance. Better, absolutely. And the step up after that would be like a proper monitoring, enterprise-grade monitoring tool like these guys. And IBM and HP and so the really big guys, they will sell you tools like these at a very, very high cost. They're super good. But the problem is that still they don't do Qlik Sense. So with this kind of monitoring, we know what's going on the Windows server. If we have 5 or 10 or 20 servers, we know exactly what's going on, how the Windows layer and the hardware is doing. But we know nothing about what's happening in Sense in real time. That's the next step. So before diving into that, let's talk about DevOps. Because the background to me getting to work in this space was that at Spotify I was surrounded by all these super smart developers, like really world-class developers. And they were all using all the latest and coolest tools and languages and whatnot. And they were using DevOps to a very, very large degree. Agile development, so agile means very short, iterative development cycles, and DevOps. So DevOps is something, anyone heard of DevOps? By the way? Yes, a few, yeah. DevOps is a concept maybe 10 years old, and it's sort of a reaction to the old way of doing things, where the old way being what's called the waterfall model, where you write specifications for 2 months, and you deploy something for 2 months, and you test it for 2 months, basically. Breaking that up into many, many, many smaller development cycles, maybe for a few days each, and you iterate them often instead, and move forward like this. That's agile, and then DevOps is the realization that, well, if the software developers were using the same tools to the extent possible that the quality assurance people and the testers were using, and if even the operations guys were using the same tools, and suddenly they could share information and moving something from development to QA to operations was not such a big thing anymore. I've been at companies where each of these teams had their own ticketing system. So if there was an issue in development, QA, and operations, had no way of knowing about it. And you have to copy paste the description of the problem between development's ticket system to QA's, and it was not a good workflow. So DevOps is really about kind of shortcutting all these things and making things smoother. And this is not revolutionary in any way. This is, I would argue that this is sort of a formalized common sense and the way people work in general. So nothing really revolutionary, except that it got a name and it got a lot of following, a lot of traction with the big companies, the Googles and Amazons and the Microsoft. Everyone started working this way, and the whole open source community was very big on this. So it got a lot of traction. So I started to apply these concepts that were already used at Spotify on the Qlik Sense environment, and came up with something we called SenseOps. Basically the same ideas and concepts, but for Qlik Sense. So iterate very, very quickly, whatever we did, and also that almost anyone could take the Qlik Sense application from the initial steps of having an idea, I have data, I want to visualize it, and move that all the way to production and end users. So any developer, any software developer at Spotify could do this if they had data they want to share with the rest of the company. No more packaging something and then handing it over to QA, who handed it over to operations. So this worked very well. So this is sort of the backdrop for the family. So the Butler family. Are any questions so far? We've gone up from 24 degrees to 24 and a half, so if you start feeling sweet, yeah, maybe you give it.
I had to close it so that you still
Get some airflow through here. So the question about the Butler family is it's a suite of open source tools. The original Butler was the first, a few years old now. It did things like provided a way so that it was easy to do certain tasks in Qlik Sense. For example, let's say that we have an app that takes a long time to reload with fresh data. A big app might take an hour to reload fresh data. And we wanted to ping end users when fresh data was loaded. So one thing the original Butler does is to provide an interface between Qlik Sense and Slack. Slack is an instant messaging system. And we could then do things like send a message to those opted in, saying, dear stakeholder, the app that you're interested in has now reloaded with fresh data, here's a link. And it popped up in their Slack browser, either on mobile or on desktop. And that way, people did not have to go into their Sense app and check, is there any new data? The data came to them instead. Super simple, but very effective. So Butler was sort of the glue in between Sense and various other tools enabling all this. Later on came the cache warmer. Fairly technical here, but put short, the cache warming is about proactively loading Sense applications into a server. Otherwise, there's risk of, let's say you have a really important, the company KPIs, the most important company numbers are available in Sense app. Then you want that Sense app to always be loaded, always be fast and snappy, and always be available. No waiting times are accepted. Cache warming can achieve that by kind of forcing that app into the memory of the servers and make sure that it always stays there. The idea is basically to improve and ensure a good user experience. So that's available. Third one being the app duplicator. Once again, fairly technical, but this one was key to Spotify going from maybe 5 or 10 cents developer to more than 100, simply because suddenly did not have to developers of Sense apps didn't have to go into Sense to create apps. Instead, there was a web page where you say that I want to create an app for visualizing data. It's a template, effectively. You select what template you want to use, the name of the app, and you click create. And then the app is created for you behind the scenes. And the new app is using, based on the template, has all the boilerplate code and all the best practices and a lot of hints and tips and tricks already in it. So people seeing a Sense app for the first time, or software developers seeing a Sense app for the first time, had a much easier time getting started because a lot of the work was done for them. So the quality of Sense apps went from mediocre at best to really, really good across the board by doing this, kind of skipping out on the standard Sense tools. Then what I'm talking about really here today is the Butler SOS family member here, which is about monitoring. And getting notifications, sending alerts to Slack and PagerDuty and so on. So, diving in. Just bring all this up. Looking at the monitoring aspect now, this is what Butler SOS looks like of the whole solution. We have Qlik Sense down here. And these slides, by the way, they're from Connections, the Clique conference in April. I had a very similar talk there, and Clique very much insisted on having the registered trademark on there. So. I did not put them there first, and I was contacted and asked to put them.
You should put the same on Butler.
Well, I haven't really registered.
Doesn't matter. It looks better.
It's open source, right? So
it always looks smarter.
It's yeah, maybe I should. So
you can make the last R with the sign.
Yeah. Maybe just have like glowy font or something. Shiny.
Cosmic Sans.
Yeah. So should I try using the pen? Is this when I try to use a pen? So what do I do now if I want to take a screenshot here? And
you have to exit the full screen mode.
Okay.
You can take that however big size you want. You press that.
No, not that.
Not this one.
I want bigger.
That
bigger.
one.
Okay.
And this will be live. This is something you can draw on top. Okay, we can make this smaller sign.
But it's so cool.
And here you can correct this with R.
It's so cool.
Try it.
You gotta try it. I tried this earlier today, but it's I want one. So what's gonna happen here is that Sense has two sources of data that we're gonna use. Sense has what's called the health check API, and there we get things like what apps are currently loaded in what server, in each server, CPU and RAM usage and stuff like that. And it has a log database, so errors and warnings are written to the log database. So both of these go into Butler. So I guess they're. I want something else. I want like.
Good. No explanation needed.
So Butler pulls in the data. And you can say that it should pull in data every 5 seconds, every 30 or 60 seconds, whatever. The only thing the Butler does is really to pull in the data at some interval in frequency, excuse me, and then emit it again to whatever sources that we might have. MQTT is like a telco protocol for machine-to-machine communication. Not using that today. Influx is a special kind of database suitable for time series data. which this is. And then Grafana is for making fancy dashboards. Yeah. Oh, this is good. Yeah, so that's it. It's really quite a basic model. And everything here, by the way, is open source, except the registered trademark ones here. But this little green keyhole is open source software. Simple. Now, that's so nice. Now it's demo time, right? Just repeat here, and same thing again. The demo, what we're going to look at, we will be using something called the Qlik Scalability tools. And if you're on the tech side and deal with more servers, this is actually a very good tool. It simulates users coming into the system. So you can say that simulate one user coming into a particular application, Sense application, every 10 seconds or on a random interval. So it's great for load testing and stress testing your environments. Here we're just going to use it to throw a bunch of users at the Sense environment. We have 2 servers. The speed at which we do that will be so high actually, so we're going to generate some errors and warnings. And I'll intentionally misconfigure the system also to generate some warnings. The butler will pull in the data and forward it to Influx. And from there, Grafana will create dashboards. Happy users. I can do that. No, I can actually. I have to. Right, no, that's fine. I was going to draw more smileys, but you know smiley. All right, so demo time. Let's see. Now I need to. Yeah, let's try that. That's cool. And now we need to kind of find. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's super small. Ooh. It's gonna be. All right, so this is Grafana. Does that show? Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Grafana is a so it's a dashboard tool. It's a tool for creating real-time dashboards. Open source again. With there are different ones here, but I like the visuals of Grafana. It's quite nice. It works on the concept of panes. That's probably it. And you can have all these different widgets where here we have some different time zones and number of warnings the last 60 minutes, number of errors the last 60 minutes. That's quite a few, almost 12,000. And then let's see, where is my mouse? There. Going deeper here now, we see that what's happening here is that we have a bunch of, we have a few warnings here. It's now 7:49, about 7-8 minutes ago, and a bunch of errors as well. And there are 2 servers, so the errors are stacked for each server. So it's super simple to see. Basically, if only one server is causing errors, it's going to be very easy to spot here. And
can I try something?
Yep.
No. How do you start? Later.
Oh, the mouse cursor.
It should work like that. We forgot to install the driver.
Oh, it should be a driver as well. That's true. It should be touch. Yeah, that would be so nice.
Possible, not now.
Also getting the actual errors and warnings here. And previously, you would have to basically remote desktop into the server, dig deep into the log files to get this information. It took 15 minutes, 20 minutes to get the particular one. Here you can search, you have it right away. And you see what's causing these errors and warnings. And probably the best part is this, where we get, well, yeah, we get a nice overview of what's happening on the server. We have CPU and RAM, just as before, with the Windows monitoring. But then what's Sense specific is number of sessions. So number of sessions users, both total users and active users. And now this is interesting because here we can suddenly see that if we have, we can get a correlation, for example, between number of users and sessions and RAM usage. We can see we've had cases where one server during the few past years at Spotify, one server died, just crashed randomly. We couldn't figure out why. And then we deployed this system, and after a while we realized that, well, actually, if we look here, exactly when the amount of available RAM just goes down, we saw that it just fell like this. And it turned out to be one application that was misbehaving, eating all the available RAM on the server, and we fixed that application and everything was stable again. One application that was misbehaving. Echo.
Just checking.
Yeah. And it's possible to bring this full screen, and this can be shown on like dashboards in the office. Usually if you have like an operational responsibility for something, these are the kind of dashboards that you want to have. We're looking at the last 15 minutes, but we can go, this week. The servers have been turned off most of this week, but you get the idea. If we look at the other server, open up the dev screen here. So we have two servers in the cluster in this Sense environment, and there were a bit of activity, up to 10 users on the main one, and up to 15 roughly on the second one, on the development one. So this is useful, and you can go even deeper here and look at, if you're really on the tech side, you can see the number of calls made into the Qlik Sense engine and number of applications loaded at any given time. A lot of tech details. And what's neat here is that, let's say that, let's see. I really should have that driver because this is driving me nuts. Let's say that we want to have an alert when, I don't know, when number of sessions, number of users go above some threshold. We want to have an alert sent to us. Maybe high usage alert or something. So let's put that in. This is done all in Grafana now. So this is way outside of Butler that I created. This is just using Grafana, basically. And we will then go into alerts here. We're going to create an alert. And it's going to be something we evaluate every, I don't know, 10 seconds. And saying that the last value should be, of every 10-second interval, should be, I don't know. Just make sure that it triggers right away. I don't know, 2. No, 3. So now we get a visual indication here that, well, if the value is here, between 0 and 3, this should alert. And what do we want to do? Let's say we can test the rule and say that, yeah, it's alerting. And the notification here would be sending a message to Slack. All right, cool. And we can say something like low usage alert. And if all goes well, we should in Slack And here is my Slack somewhere.
The other screen.
Yeah. And again, this is really, really tiny.
Too high resolution of the screen.
Yeah,
Sorry for that.
That's a problem. That's a problem. That's a tough problem to have. Basically, here we get notifications where and alerts when something meets the specifications we set. And the beauty here is that these go to all your devices. So if you're on call responsible for the sense environment, you get notified wherever you are if you have alerts turned on. There's a huge number of integrations with Grafana, so you can send alerts to almost any system, any chat system, any reliability system like PagerDuty or something and so on.
May I have
Yes.
a question?
Certainly.
So what you're showing us is that you're tracking all data which refers to the servers, but did you also go down to the data regarding objects, like some charts, like memory usage, calculation time, so these kind of things that you could find in Clique?
Right. So the question, if
Yeah, please
for
repeat.
those remotely, is whether this allows us to track more detailed metrics for individual charts, for example. And the answer is no. So currently the health check API only gives us data on an app level. The data you describe, it is available in the logs. So if you or someone or Clique wanted to, it would be possible to extend the operations monitor, that app, to also look at individual charts. For the data is there. It's just not exposed in an app so far. What else? Let's see. If we switch back to good old PowerPoint. You've seen these. And so the recipe here is, as usual, you can do things in many different ways, but what I usually do, and I've timed myself doing this in less than 10 minutes. If everything's prepped and ready to go, you can do this quite quickly. So you need a small Linux server. What we see now runs on the smallest Google box money can buy. So it cost me like $4 per month or something. So you don't need big hardware. You can run this on your existing Sense environment. I would recommend putting on a separate small server. You can certainly put it in Docker containers if you like that. You install Influx and Grafana on your server. You install Butler and start that. And here's with Butler you need access to certificates, so security certificates that you get from your Sense environment. They're used for authentication. They will allow the Butler SOS software to talk to Sense effectively. And create some Grafana dashboards like the ones we looked at. And that's it. So everything's simple once you know how to do it, right? But it's reasonably straightforward, and there's been great success of the medium to large companies I know that have done this. It's been, for most of them, it's been kind of a before and after experience when it comes to monitoring and trusting the Sense environment. Previously, Sense was something that, yeah, it's great, it provides super tools and insights, but the end user trust was always a bit shaky, or could be a bit shaky. With this kind of setup, when there were issues, they were solved much, much faster. That's good. And last, right, you can be my keeper if you don't mind.
Yeah, I can be your clicker.
So second last slide.
Small announcement.
Yes.
For every single question, I have something here in the back.
Ooh, now's the time to get to wake up. Looking ahead, I always like to look ahead. There's a service called Datadog that I discovered just a few weeks ago. There are many of these, but this is effectively something that they've done. We're using Datadog instead of Influx and Grafana. You basically send the data from Butler to Datadog instead. They have all these beautiful charts and a great API and whatnot. That's kind of where I'm going in the next few months, integrating Butler SOS with Datadog. I'm not affiliated with it anyway, I just like it. Yes, please. And that's my last slide, so questions.
Okay, so you were saying at the beginning that right now these logs that are given in the Qlik Sense, they do gather some data, but it is not possible to get into the details from live RAM consumption, etc. And you are showing right now that in Grafana you can select the every 5 seconds, whatever the, so you are getting this from the event, from the OS or from where?
So the CPU load and the RAM usage, which we looked at here, comes from, oh, there you go, comes from the health check API of Qlik Sense. So I get all the data from Qlik Sense, but Qlik Sense, of course, gets the RAM usage from Windows.
Okay.
So that's, I ask Qlik Sense for a bunch of data, including RAM and CPU, and Sense will take some of that data from the Windows layer and some of it from its own stack of information.
So it does not by any chance influence the server, because what I thought of that, okay, if I will keep asking the server give me the data, I will also influence and it may lead to crash.
Of course, yeah, you will influence, but the effect of that query of Butler asking for data all the time, it's
having a setup of refreshing the app every 1 minute would probably more kill the resources than...
it's barely noticeable. I mean, I've run this on very, very small servers, and I don't even notice the Butler doing its thing.
Okay.
So that should not be a problem. Maybe if you have like hundreds of servers, that querying could be significant, but then you probably want to have a dedicated server anyway.
How big is the data collected every 5 seconds? After 1 day, you gather how much?
You know,
because you said it should be enough, a small.
Yeah, that's also a very good question. That was my first concern when we started doing this. So should we have like a retention policy? Throw away everything over the 2 months or 3 months?
Yeah.
We never did that. And I think we might have like 100 gig disk on the Butler server, 7500. So fairly small. And we collected all the data for a year and a half, almost 2 years. Every 15 seconds, maybe. And it barely moved the needle on the disk space. So InfluxDB is super, super efficient at storing data, storing time series data. And that's the beauty of it. It stores it efficiently, and it's great for querying also time series data. So it's
data log so the log entries are in the Influx as well?
Yeah. So everything goes into Influx.
And one more question regarding the, because
Come
you said that
Who wants to collect the most? Watch out.
I see a battle coming here. So who gets the most swag?
you're saying that you can connect it to any, let's say, popular messenger.
Yeah.
I'm working for a Korean company and we do have our own.
Right, okay.
Is there any possibility, because I like the tool.
If it has APIs.
If it has an API, sure.
Does Slack have plenty of APIs to enjoy? If your communicator have APIs?
Okay, let me repeat. I'm working for a Korean company.
Then you answered your question yourself, probably.
If there's a way for an external piece of software to send messages in this through this service, then it can be done. But it's hard to say yes or no. But
So I hit the wall.
Come on, guys.
or just have like an SMS API, you know, so you send as a text message or something.
Maybe some questions from Katowice. Just type them into the chat. We read it out.
How do you get them
How will it throw?
How I will get? I will not get them gadgets now. I will organize something.
Just fax it.
I will send them a picture of what they missed. What's coming. Any more questions? Come on, guys. You can do it. We have so many
Everyone's dying.
Qlik Sense experts in the room. It should be
I'm up to
like.
25 degrees now, so I feel your pain.
Yeah, we tried with the aircon. We failed. So, without further ado, it's time for a break with pizza and networking. Thank you, Göran.
Thank you. And if you want to get in touch, just get in touch.